Is there something practical you could share with someone in that situation that really feels passionately about a dream, but literally doesn't even know where to begin the path of switching lanes?
hmm No, I think it's a great question, and I think we've all been there. I mean, I've definitely been there where, my husband lost his job, and I was not very happy necessarily where I was, but it wasn't really an option of making a change at that point. To So I think the from a practical perspective, the two things that I have helped me, and one is really making the time to there's a I think Reid Hoffman wrote a book called The Startup of You,
Hmm. Yeah.
which I think has some really great exercises that uh, dig deep into what your superpower is. And so even if you're in a job that's just a job, and you have this dream and you want to get out of it, um, really make sure that that's the dream is something that is realistic. Not, I shouldn't say realistic for you, but I think a lot of times we get obsessed with these specific dreams, and then we get there and we're like, oh, this is not exactly where I wanted to be. And so take some time to really think through, what is your superpower, what are you good at, what kinds of environments would you be successful in, and then as much as you can. So that's one thing, like do those exercises. And then two is use your free time to start networking. Go to some, I mean, I'm here in Los Angeles. There are meetups that are posted. Just put yourself out there. That's one thing I learned. It's is just going to some of these meetup, and it's hard sometimes, but
Mhm.
just start meeting people and then asking people for coffee. And I think if you just say, hey, I'm really interested to learn more about what you do, would you mind if I take you for coffee for half an hour? You'd be surprised at how open people are to having conversations, just informational interviews. Like, I just want to better understand what you do, and then building those relationships. And for me, at least, I'm always surprised at how, like, the doors don't always open immediately, but I'm always surprised at how doors do open in unexpected
Right.
ways.
Being able to know what's coming and positioning yourself in line with that opportunity is absolutely critical. What are some ways that you've done that someone else might be able to apply as well?
And again, I think it starts with small steps. And so, for me, it was, you know, kind of starting with actually, I mean, I would say it depends on where you are in your career, but I think um, starting, I if you're early in your career, look at startups. Just look at what are the companies in your area, what are
Mhm.
companies that you find interesting, and and if you're looking for a job, start there. I think it's a really interesting place to start early in your career, because you get to learn so much and you get to see so much. And in terms of knowing where is technology going, or what are the opportunities there, I think, again, it's about starting the education process. And you can do that by these podcasts. I think are great. I mean, I just actually compare it to, like, when I started my career in 1996, 97. Like, there was so much less information out there, and there's so much more information out there now today. And so I think a lot about just reading and following people on Twitter, and just starting to see, what are things that interest you.
Mm.
And I think we all have a general sense of where the future is, and technology is where the future is. And then it's just a matter of figuring out, like, what in technology, I mean, technology is so amorphous, and what specifically in technology is interesting to you.
What advice would you give to female founders that may be seeking capital but don't quite know how to prepare themselves or put their best foot forward, or just make sure that they are positioning themselves successfully?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a great question. And a piece of me says it shouldn't matter if you're a female or a male, but I do
Mm.
think that females in particular just tend to not have had the same experiences or the same network as men do. And I think also a vast overgeneralization is that women tend to undersell themselves, or rather, want everything to be perfect before they put something out there, and will never tend to not want to overpromise. Is it, again, a vast overgeneralization? But again, I would, one, just be realistic with what you need, and don't ask for less just to ask for less. And so be really realistic about how much money you think you'll need for your business. Um, I have been just so inspired by the new women groups that have sprung up, and so there are a lot more women run funds now, and I do think it's changed the way companies are being funded and what kinds of companies are being funded. I More than half of my companies have women founders, and more than that, there are businesses that I'm funding that one is actually a business for women home-based businesses, and this insight that a lot of women have not been able to go back into the workforce after they have children, either through choice or they just felt like they didn't have the skill set, but they have built really interesting skills. And how do you still monetize that? How do you still, if you're really good at travel planning, or really good at party planning, or you're really good at organization, how do you still sell that? But getting back to your question, like, how do you think about fundraising? I reach out to, there are some great groups, at least here in Los Angeles, and I think in most communities now, um, like accelerator groups or mentoring groups that can really help you with your pitch and putting your presentation together. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, and then just, I would start there, really, and then network and just ask for conversations with investors in your community, but really start with some of those organizations that are popping up that are really focusing on helping entrepreneurs and really helping them think through both the pitch deck but also their business, and how to, team building, just expenses, and all those things that go into building a business.
What are some of the common traits and attributes that you find in those change makers and leaders that are pioneering to create the future of our world?
Yeah. So, I think the one interesting thing about startup leaders, I will say, is like it's this interesting blend of passion and vision, but also execution.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, to get more specific, so you have to really be able to sell your vision. You have to be able to communicate very well, and really get people to start any kind of, to be a change maker. You need to get people around you who are excited about your message and excited to be with you. And so that the ability to communicate effectively and to really synthesize a story, I think, is extremely important. Um, the other thing that I think a lot about is like being hyper focused. And so one of my mentors told me, like, I just get so overwhelmed. I have so many things to do. And he was like, just pick the 2 things you want to knock out of the park next week. Like,
Mm.
just pick 2 things and just focus on those 2 things and knock those out of the park, and don't worry about the rest. And it's really hard to do. And I still can't say I've mastered it, but just having that focus, I think, really helps, because otherwise you get so bogged down with all the other things, and you end up doing things that don't matter. And so, to me, the most effective leaders that I've worked with have been the people who can just be so laser focused, and really know what matters, and focus on those things, so they can make an impact there, and then the other things actually just fall away. It's really interesting, like some of those little things that you think you need to do just fall away if you can really focus on the big stuff.